There is a moment, and if you are honest with yourself, you know exactly which one, where something shifted. It was not dramatic. There was no door slamming, no final goodbye, no clean ending you could grieve and then release. It was quieter than that. A text that came a little slower. A warmth that pulled back just slightly, like a tide you only notice is receding when your feet are already dry. And then, almost without your permission, this person moved into a room inside your mind and simply stayed there. You did not invite them to live there. You did not hang a sign on the door. But every morning, before the day even has a shape, they are already present, in the hollow space between sleeping and waking, in the middle of a sentence you are saying to someone else, in the specific silence of a Sunday afternoon when everything is fine, but you are not, because you are thinking about them again. And the thought that follows, the one you almost do not want to admit, is this. Does this person actually think about me too? Does any of this mean anything to them at all? What I'm going to tell you today will not be easy to hear, not because it is painful, though parts of it may be, but because it is going to ask something of you that most relationship content never does. It is going to ask you to look inward, not at them, not at what they did or did not do, not at the text thread or the mixed signals or the moment everything changed. It is going to ask you to look at yourself, at the part of you that keeps choosing to return to this person in your mind, and understand what that returning is actually trying to tell you. Because here is the truth that Carl Jung understood about the human heart more than a century ago, and that most of us are still only beginning to grasp. The people who haunt us are not accidents. The ones who live in our minds rent-free, the ones whose names rise in our throats at the strangest moments, the ones we replay, they are not random. They are mirrors. And what they are reflecting back at us is something we have not yet been willing to see about ourselves, but we will come back to that. First, let me tell you something about the person you cannot stop thinking about. They do care for you. I want you to hold that for a moment without immediately deflating it or inflating it. Not they are obsessed with you, and not they care about you the way someone cares about an old movie they watched once. Something in between, something complicated and real and slightly painful in the way that real things often are. They carry something for you, even now, even in the silence, even in whatever distance has formed between you. What they feel is not gone. But here is where it gets interesting, and where most people get it completely wrong. The distance is not what you think it is. When someone pulls back from a connection that clearly mattered, the mind immediately begins its detective work. Was it something I said? Was I too much? Not enough? Did I misread everything? And underneath all of those questions is one quiet, terrifying one. Am I the kind of person who can be easily left? That question is the one that keeps you up at night. And that question, not them, not their silence, not what they did or did not do. That question is where the real work begins. But let us slow down. Because to understand why they pulled away, you first need to understand something about the psychology of emotional intensity. Something most people have never been taught. Jung wrote about a concept he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we cannot face directly, so we bury them. We do not destroy them. We hide them in the unconscious, where they shape our behavior without our awareness. And one of the most common things people bury in their shadow is their own capacity for love, their own need for connection. Because if you have ever been hurt, truly hurt, not inconvenienced but hurt in a way that rewired something inside you, then love starts to feel dangerous. Closeness becomes a threat. Depth becomes something you want, and fear in exactly equal measure. The person you think about? There is a very real possibility that you touched something in their shadow. You reached into a place they had carefully kept quiet, and something in them responded, lit up, opened, leaned toward you, before the fear caught up and pulled them back. And when that happens, when someone's shadow self is activated by another person, the instinct is not to run toward. The instinct is to manage, to create distance, to regulate the intensity before it overwhelms the structure they have spent years building to feel safe. This is not a rejection of you. This is a war happening entirely inside of them, and you are not even in the room. But you feel it. Of course you do, because you are the one standing on the other side of the silence, interpreting it, personalizing it, trying to read the message in the absence of a message. And that is one of the most disorienting experiences a human being can have in a relationship. The sense that something real existed, that it mattered, that you were not imagining it, but you cannot prove it because it is no longer visible. Let me tell you something about visibility, or rather, about what becomes invisible when fear takes the wheel. There was a woman, I will call her Maya, and she spent the better part of a year thinking about a man she had met through work. They had spent 3 months in close proximity, sharing lunches and long conversations, and the particular intimacy that builds between two people who discover they see the world the same way. He was warm. He was curious. He asked questions that made her feel like she was worth being curious about. And then, gradually, with no announcement, no explanation, no clean ending. ANC Naihin and he became the Maiwi. Professional, polite in the way that people are polite when they are trying not to feel something. Maya did what most of us do. She reviewed the evidence. She reread old messages, looking for the moment she had done something wrong. She asked her friends, who offered the full range of contradictory advice that friends always offer. She downloaded the dating app, hated it, deleted it. She told herself she was over it at least 40 times, which she knew even as she said it was not true, because you do not tell yourself you are over something 40 times if you are over it. What Maya did not know, what she could not have known without someone telling her, was that the man she could not stop thinking about was simultaneously trying not to think about her. Not because he did not care, but because caring about her had done something unexpected. It had cracked a door inside him that he had locked years ago, after a different ending to a different story, and he was not ready for what was on the other side of that door. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He walked away from the door and he kept walking. He still thought about her. He thought about the way she laughed a little too loud at her own jokes before anyone else had a chance to react. He thought about the afternoon they had gotten caught in the rain and stood under the awning of a bookstore and talked for 2 hours without either of them mentioning that the rain had stopped. He thought about her the way you think about a song you heard once, in a specific place, at a specific time, and now you cannot separate the song from the feeling, and so you avoid both. This is what emotional complexity looks like from the inside. Not coldness, not indifference. Something much more tangled and human than that. And yet, here is the part that matters. The part that most conversations about love and distance never arrive at, because they are too busy offering comfort to offer truth. Maya's obsessive thinking about this man was not really about him. I want you to sit with that sentence for a moment, because I know it is uncomfortable. I know part of you wants to skip past it, but this is the part that could actually change something for you if you are willing to let it. When we cannot stop thinking about a specific person, when they have taken up permanent residence in our minds despite our best efforts to evict them, Jung would say that something else is happening beneath the surface. He called it projection. The idea that we do not fall in love with people as they actually are. We fall in love with what they represent to us, with the qualities we see in them that are actually, on some level, qualities we have not yet claimed in ourselves, or qualities we were once told we did not deserve. The man Maya could not stop thinking about. He had made her feel intelligent, genuinely, seen all the way through, intelligent. And Maya had grown up in a house where being smart was not celebrated, where she had learned early and painfully to make herself smaller, to laugh off her own ideas before anyone else could dismiss them. So, when this man looked at her, really looked with genuine interest and attention, something in her that had been waiting a very long time felt recognized. That is what she missed. Not just him, the version of herself that existed in his presence. And this is where Jung's work becomes not just intellectually interesting, but actively life-changing. Because if the person you cannot stop thinking about is someone who made you feel a certain way about yourself, valued, interesting, beautiful, brave, safe, alive, then what your obsessive thinking is actually pointing toward is a hunger, not for them specifically, but for that feeling, for that version of you. And the devastating, liberating truth is this: that feeling does not live in them. It lives in you. They just helped you find it. But you have been so focused on them, on what they meant, on what they feel, on whether they are thinking about you right now in this exact moment, that you have missed the more important question. The question your subconscious has been trying to ask you through every late-night replay and every spiral of wondering, for however long this has been going on. When are you going to give yourself what you have been waiting for them to give you? This is not me telling you that your feelings are not real. They are real. The connection you felt was real. What they feel for you, and I will say it again clearly, is real. But real feelings between two people do not automatically create a relationship. They do not automatically override fear or timing or the wounds that both people carry into every new connection like luggage they have long since forgotten is heavy. What creates a relationship, what transforms a feeling into a life, is two people who are simultaneously willing and ready to be seen. And those two things, willingness and readiness, do not always arrive at the same time. This is one of the cruelest things about love. Two people can be exactly right for each other and still be exactly wrong for each other at this particular moment in this particular life, because love does not exist in a vacuum. It exists inside two specific human beings, each carrying their own specific history, their own specific fears, their own wounds that have not yet finished healing. And sometimes, the person who moves you the most is the person who also, unintentionally, activates the most frightened parts of you, or activates the most frightened parts of them. And the result is this: two people who feel deeply and show it barely. Two people orbiting each other at a careful distance, held in place by the same gravity that is also keeping them apart. The silence you feel from them is not emptiness. It is pressure. It is the weight of something unspoken that has not yet found its form. But here is what I need you to understand, because this is where I want to be completely honest with you, in a way that goes beyond comfort and into something more valuable. Understanding their emotional landscape does not mean waiting. It does not mean keeping yourself in suspension while they work through what they are working through. It does not mean staying emotionally available to someone who has not chosen to show up for you. Compassion for their process is real and valid. But compassion for them and clarity about your own needs are not in conflict. You can understand exactly why someone cannot give you what you need and still decide that what you need matters. This is the part of the story that no one wants to talk about in the breathless early stages of attachment, when someone is still close enough to smell and the feeling of them is still new. But you are not in those early stages anymore. You are in the after. You are in the quiet and the absence and the wondering. And in this space, in the honest, unglamorous space of missing someone who is not showing up, a question becomes unavoidable. What are you doing with your own life while you wait for this to resolve itself? Because the mind that keeps returning to them, that beautiful, loyal, overthinking mind of yours, is also a mind capable of extraordinary things. It is a mind that clearly knows how to feel deeply, how to connect, how to see another person with nuance and generosity. Those are not small things. Those are the ingredients of a rich emotional life. But right now, a significant portion of that richness is being redirected outward towards someone who is, at least in this moment, not available to receive it. And there is something almost heartbreaking about that, something that Jung, with his deep understanding of the unconscious, would recognize immediately. Because the energy we pour into longing, the creativity, the emotional intelligence, the intensity, that energy does not disappear. It just waits. It builds up behind the dam of an unresolved connection, looking for somewhere to go. What would happen if you let some of it go somewhere else? Not as a strategy, not as a technique to make them chase you, which is advice I will not give you because it treats your genuine emotional life like a chess move, but as a genuine question, asked in love, what would happen if you redirected even a fraction of the attention you give to thinking about them back toward yourself, toward the things you want, toward the life you are building, toward the version of you that exists when you are not organizing yourself around someone else's emotional availability? There is a concept in Jungian psychology called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming more fully yourself, of integrating the parts of you that have been split off, buried, ignored, or given away. And one of the most significant places where women give away parts of themselves is in the space of longing, in the waiting, in the sustained emotional investment in someone who has not yet made themselves consistently available. Not because you are foolish, not because you do not know better on some level, but because the feelings are real. And when feelings are real, it is genuinely hard to prioritize yourself. It feels selfish. It feels like giving up. It feels like closing a door on something that might still open on its own. But here is what I want to offer you as a different way of seeing it. Becoming more yourself, claiming your own attention, your own time, your own emotional energy, is not closing the door on them. It is opening a door on you. And whatever is meant to find its way to you will have a much clearer path when you are standing fully in your own life, rather than half inside it. Half inside a story about someone who is not yet ready to tell their part of it. The person you think about does carry something real. Their feelings are not nothing. Their distance is not indifference. Their silence is not a verdict. But none of those truths change the fact that you deserve someone who moves toward you, not perfectly, not without fear or hesitation or the occasional difficult conversation, but someone who, when the fear rises, chooses you anyway. Someone who, when the door inside them cracks open, does not lock it again and walk away. Someone who's willing to be a little bit afraid and a little bit uncertain and still, in spite of all of that, present. That is not an impossible standard. That is a human one. And you are allowed to hold out for it. Not because the person you think about is unworthy of care or incapable of growth. They may be extraordinarily capable of both, but because your emotional life is not a waiting room. You do not have to sit in the in-between indefinitely on the possibility that someone else will eventually be ready. There is something they said in Jungian circles that I find almost unbearably true. We do not attract what we want. We attract what we are. And if part of you, in some deep, unexamined place, believes that love requires waiting, requires proving, requires patience beyond what is reasonable, requires making yourself small or still or endlessly available, then every person you connect with will, in some form, require that of you, until you stop, until you look directly at that belief and decide, with your whole self, that it is not true. You are not someone who needs to be earned slowly. You are not someone who should feel grateful for crumbs. You are not someone for whom love should feel primarily like an exercise in tolerance and endurance. Love, real love, the kind that Jung was pointing toward when he wrote about the sacred in human connection. Love should feel like expansion, like becoming more of yourself in the presence of another person, like being seen all the way down and chosen anyway. You have felt glimpses of that. In this connection, in whatever moments existed between you and this person before the distance formed, those glimpses were real. They told you something true about what you are capable of feeling. They opened a part of you that perhaps had been resting, and for that, for showing you what is possible, this person deserves your genuine compassion, regardless of what comes next. But those glimpses were not the ceiling. They were a door. And the question, The question that I want to leave sitting in you, not as a burden, but as an invitation, is this. What would it look like to walk through it? Not with them, necessarily. Not waiting for them to be ready to walk through with you, but on your own. Into a life that is full enough and rich enough and honest enough that whatever comes to meet you there, whether it is this person, changed and ready, or someone entirely new, or simply a deeper version of yourself, is met by someone who has not been standing still. You have been so focused on whether they think about you that you have perhaps forgotten to ask whether you are thinking about yourself, whether you are choosing yourself, whether you are in the quiet moments when no one is watching and no one is measuring your love or your loyalty or your patience, turning even a fraction of all of that generous attention back toward your own heart. They care for you deeply, in whatever form is available to them right now. And that is true, and it matters, and it is not nothing. But so do you. You care for yourself, or you are learning to. And that quiet, difficult, unglamorous, revolutionary act is where every real love story begins. Not in the waiting, not in the wondering, not in the replaying of moments that are already finished, in the returning to yourself. That is where you are going. And something tells me, something in the very fact that you are here, that you are listening, that you are asking these questions rather than simply accepting the surface of things, that you already know it. Go there.